Story 1. A mantis shrimp would be absolutely terrifying with those punch claws. Story 2. A giant mosquito. The thought of its proboscis-piercing skin as large as a whale's is horrifying. Story 3. The answer, whether regular-sized or whale-sized, will always be humans. Story 4. Ants can lift 100 times their weight. There is nowhere to run because they are fast. No building is safe. Story 5. A hummingbird. Its wing beats would topple skyscrapers, and because it has such a high metabolism it will pick off people non-stop. Story 6. A horse-sized mantis shrimp. This punch already generates cavitation shock waves that crack shells. Scaled up, it could shatter bones through water and spot you from miles away with its eyes. Story 7. Totally not answering the question, but it would be wild to see a brontosaurus the size of a dog. Story 8. Bright blue, hostile dragon-like alien creatures. They are small but already terrifying. They feed on toxic jellyfish and increase the jellyfish's venom potency. Because they stay close together, a group could behave like a school of whale-sized dragon-like creatures. That is extremely alarming. Story 9. Between a cassowary and a polar bear, I would pick the polar bear. Both are land animals with easier access to people and are powerful predators, but the polar bear has a significant size advantage and is a true carnivore. That said, I still would not mess with a cassowary. Story 10. How has no one said snake yet? Snakes are my favorite animal, but I would be petrified if I saw one the size of a blue whale. Story 11. Dung beetle. They can already pull 1,100 times their own body weight. If the average weight of a blue whale is 300,000 pounds, they would be able to move objects as heavy as 330 million pounds, or roughly 165,000 tons. That is enough to topple a small skyscraper, or potentially a large one if they are motivated. Could become a literal Godzilla scenario. Story 12. Mantis shrimp. Imagine how powerful their punch would be on a whale-sized scale. Story 13. I would say mosquitoes. Imagine we don't have enough blood for them. Story 14. People have genuine panic attacks when they see a spider, to the point that some video games that feature giant spiders provide an option to remove them from the game. I think Hogwarts Legacy does this. I can only imagine how many people would have heart attacks if a tarantula were the size of a whale. Story 15. Tardigrades, also known as water bears, can survive extreme conditions. A giant one would be like fighting a kaiju. Story 16. The praying mantis is one of the most brutal animals. Now we have to get Godzilla out of the ocean. Story 17. A mosquito wouldn't drink blood. It would drain you like a Capri Sun. Story 18. Amoeba proteus. Kilogram for kilogram, it is the most vicious creature on Earth. If it can envelop and digest something, it will. If it cannot digest that material, it will eventually excrete it. Story 19. Palace cats are highly successful hunters, and we would be their snacks. Story 20. The tarantula hawk moth may be the scariest thing on the planet, and it's still measured in inches and centimeters. Story 21. Honey badgers do not care. There is a video in which one confronted an elephant and was kicked away like a football. Story 22. An amoeba the size of a blue whale would be pretty awful. A giant amorphous blob that consumes. Story 23. If animals were the size of a whale, most would be incapable of movement. Animals have the sizes and masses they do because of gravity. Whales can be large because they live in water. Buoyancy in a dense fluid supports them. They could not support their bodies on land. Story 24. Well, bugs in general would not have the muscle advantage they have when they are small, so a larger species that would not be affected as much would be better. A giant mealworm or a caterpillar. Story 25. An ant for sure. Have you seen its face up close? It's horrifying. Story 26. I think any animal would be terrifying if it were the size of a whale. An adorable puppy would be horrifying. Story 27. Basically every animal, besides the whale itself, would be terrifying. Story 28. I have seen praying mantises go after birds and even mice. They are fearless. Story 29. A shark is the only thing I can think of that would be feasible and terrifying. A whale-sized spider might be the stuff of nightmares, but it would collapse under its own weight and likely die because its vital organs would not function properly at that size. A whale-sized shark would function like a regular shark while still supporting its extra weight. Story 30. Pistol shrimp or mantis shrimp. Both are horrible, but are we talking about a blue whale or something smaller? Story 31. A whale-sized centipede sprinting on hundreds of legs with fangs the size of cars is a pure nightmare. Story 32. A Portuguese man-of-war, a poison dart frog, or other animals that are extremely neurotoxic to the touch. Story 33. A man-eating millipede. It is incredibly fast and eats everything with reckless abandon. Story 34. The already giant centipede moves at a speed relative to its size, like ants. Story 35. Any feline or mustelid would be terrifying. Imagine a whale-sized barn cat. Story 36. Any insect, spider, centipede, or scorpion would top my list. Story 37. A cat. Imagine a whale constantly sitting on you, no matter how much you try to keep it away. Story 38. For the water, I would say a colossal squid or a tiger shark or a bull shark. On land, that would be my former stepmom. An untreated bipolar Karen the size of a whale. Yikes. Story 39. Centipedes. Fuck them and their tiny 100 legs. At the size of a whale, they would be a fucking natural disaster. Story 40. Tick. Imagine if the global tick population remained the same. We would all be exsanguinated within days. Story 41. This animal already exists. It's large, fast, strong, highly intelligent, works in teams, and can kill anything it wants. It's called an orca. Story 42. I think any animal that is not a whale would probably collapse under its own weight. Mosquitoes would be landlocked, and honey badgers would not be able to stand upright. Most animals not supported by water at that size would die before drawing a single breath. Story 43. Velvet worms, the ones that spit out their intestines and then slurp them back up. Story 44. I cannot imagine the damage a whale-sized pistol shrimp could wreak. It would be like Goku casting the spirit bomb. Story 45. Honestly, a whale, because size is an important regulatory factor for many things. Story 46. Watch hummingbirds sometime. They are absolutely fearless and fiercely territorial. Story 47. The mantis shrimp. It is not even close. Story 48. A shoebill or a marabou stork. I am torn between which would be worse. Story 49. Canadian geese, obvious. Really? Their hatred for humans surpasses that of all other species. Story 50. Chihuahuas are obviously a nightmare at 3 pounds. Imagine them at 30 tons. Story 51. A whale-sized wolf spider carrying an egg sac with hundreds of dog-sized babies. Story 52. Argentine lake duck. Look up how large its tail is compared to its body size. Story 53. Imagine a colossal anteater slurping people out of buildings. Story 54. Something with wings. Definitely some form of insect, because at that scale in this hypothetical they would be extremely strong and heavily armored. My vote is the praying mantis. Many other insects could be more dangerous, but this would be a very serious threat. Story 55. I don't know. The question is, what is generally the most aggressive and hostile, especially toward young children? Story 56. Praying mantis, easy. Like they say in Jurassic Park, you are alive when they start to eat you. All you can do is pray they start with your head. Story 57. Whales are already pretty scary. They can kill you without even realizing it. Story 58. A plain grasshopper. The amount of vegetation it could eat in a single day would devastate regional environments within weeks. Story 59. A simple chicken could easily eat humans and not think twice about it. Story 60. The top predator in the ocean is the killer whale. Technically, it is a dolphin. Story 61. The Asian weaver ant can lift 100 times its body weight. A blue whale weighs about 300,000 pounds, so an Asian weaver ant scaled to that size could potentially lift 30 million pounds, or 15,000 tons. For context, 15,000 tons is roughly the weight of a large loaded freight train. Story 62. A house cat would casually disembowel you and throw you around for fun until you stopped screaming. Story 63. Most bugs, such as ants, centipedes, and spiders, are small for a reason. Story 64. Cat. I have seen my cat hunt for mice. It shows no mercy despite the mouse begging for its life. Story 65. Any corvid species is very intelligent and usually omnivorous. A whale-sized corvid would probably eat everyone it encounters and would almost certainly take shiny things it finds, such as buildings. Story 66. Make a bat the size of a whale and create a nightmare dragon. Story 67. If physics were ignored to make the animal functional, it would be a centipede. If physics still applied, it would be a slug. Story 68. Spiders imagine a fucking 60-foot-long creature with 8 legs. Story 69. Time to rain on the fun parade. No arthropod would be able to survive at that size. Its respiratory system, even if scaled up, would not allow enough oxygen. Also, which whales specifically? Some whales are about 7 feet long and 400 pounds, such as the dwarf sperm whale, while others can be as large as 100 feet long and 200 tons, such as the blue whale. If we are talking about the dwarf sperm whale, we already have scary animals that are larger, such as grizzly bears. Story 70. Any cat. Even when they are just playing around, they are killing hundreds of people. Story 71. Dragonflies are possibly the most successful predators on the planet, estimated to miss their prey only once in every 20 attempts. Now imagine one scaled up to a size where its prey could be humans or even larger, depending on the whale used for comparison. You will briefly hear a buzzing sound, distorted by the Doppler effect as it approaches at ludicrous speed. Then you are dead. Story 72. There are several species of small cats and, believe it or not, rodents that are considered the best hunters in the world, with hunting success rates that dwarf those of other predators. If they were the size of whales, we would all find ourselves much further down the food chain. Story 73. Whales are destroying boats for amusement. They surface right on top of your kayak. They're just giants with no spatial awareness. Story 74. If ants suddenly grew in size, they could destroy the entire world. There are trillions of them roaming the planet and creating small worlds beneath our feet. Story 75. Just an ordinary cat. A whale-sized cat would be terrifying. Imagine hairball bombs falling from the sky or a loud meowing siren going off just as you are about to fall asleep. Story 76. Skunks can be dangerous. They are omnivores that eat a wide variety of food and could consume crops and food stores. A very large one could even threaten people. If provoked or killed, a skunk will spray a strong, long-lasting odor that can cover a wide area. Skunk spray can cause significant irritation to the skin, eyes, and lungs, producing stinging, tearing, nausea, and difficulty breathing. A whale-sized skunk would therefore be close to a weapon of mass destruction. Story 77. Basic physics tells us that if you scale up many animals, they lose their ability to be very dangerous. When you double the length of anything and scale all other dimensions proportionally, mass increases by a factor of 8 while cross-sectional area, a measure of muscular strength, increases by a factor of 4. Repeat this scaling and the animal cannot support its own weight. That is why animals of that size live in water to support their enormous weight. There are some very large land animals, but none as large as most whales. They evolved very strong legs to compensate. If you simply scale up most animals that much, they will collapse. Story 78. Cockroaches are far more unsettling to me than spiders or centipedes, which somehow occupy the top spots in this thread. Story 79. Tarantula. Forgive me for presenting an arachnid instead. Story 80. Ants are absolutely terrifying. They are relatively fast, chitin-armored, and durable. They would have an enormous pincer crushing force and can burrow through solid objects and walk up vertical surfaces. Story 81. A slug. Those things are sentient turds, and the sight of one the size of a whale would make me vomit. Story 82. I would say a tick. Its carapace would be freaking bulletproof, and all it would want is to latch on and suck blood. A tick the size of a raccoon would give me nightmares. Story 83. A whale. Almost anything else would fail to thrive or be rendered ineffective if scaled up. Most land and air creatures would collapse under their own weight. Whales, as they are, can vibrate your bones apart and turn your brain to goo by vocalizing if you are in the water and close enough. I am not sure how much I am exaggerating. I might not be. Story 84. I would choose any bird of prey, assuming it could somehow still fly while whale-sized. It would be the rock of myth, able to swoop down and carry off an elephant or a cow in each claw, majestic yet terrifying. For raw scariness, giant insects win. Imagine a wasp that could still fly at whale size, 110 feet long with a 200-foot wingspan, dropping from the sky in a roar of wings to wreak destruction. Story 85. Giant isopods are the deep sea's answer to the centipede. Heavily armored, they have been observed feeding on sharks. Story 86. A wasp the size of a whale would be the worst thing imaginable. Wasps already get angry at you for existing, so instead of buzzing your soda can, they would dive bomb entire neighborhoods. Story 87. Ants. If they can lift 50 times their body weight, imagine how unstoppable they would be. They could lift an entire skyscraper. And do not get me started on soldier ants, flying ants, those that bite, or those that eat with wood being a common building material. Story 88. How about those wasps that inject their eggs into you? That can't be fun. Story 89. Rats are incredibly strong for their weight. They can jump many times their height, have very strong bite force, and can chew through a wide range of materials. Story 90. Forget the size of a whale. A 6-foot praying mantis would be horrifying. Story 91. That strange fish with long teeth and a light bulb hanging from its head is actually tiny and can fit in your hand. Is it the size of a whale? No, buddy. I am out of here. Story 92. Nothing, to be honest. Humans would quickly wipe them out, as we do to anything else that poses a problem for our species. Story 93. A housefly, if it could still fly, could potentially wreck a city. When it feeds, it vomits digested fluids and saliva onto what it intends to consume, then consumes the dissolved material with its proboscis. Since we would be much smaller in comparison, we would be on the menu. To emphasize the scary aspect, houseflies look freaky up close. Story 94. If I ever saw a silverfish as big as a bus, I would go straight home and test the load-bearing capacity of my ceiling fan. Story 95. Dragonflies. They are considered the best hunters in the animal kingdom, with a 97% success rate. They have almost 360 degrees of vision, near-perfect flight control with 4 independent wings, can predict where their prey is going, and some species can fly at nearly 30 miles per hour. On top of remarkable biology, they are extraordinary predators. From a bug's point of view, being eaten by a dragonfly is the equivalent of being intercepted by a Mach 10 fighter jet with precise flight mapping and omnidirectional control, essentially heat-seeking its prey. We would be doomed. Story 96. Praying mantis. I have seen a praying mantis take down birds and medium-sized reptiles and eat them while they are still alive. Imagine if one were whale-sized. Story 97. You people are all insane. The obvious answer is a domestic house cat. Story 98. Well, dragonflies have a 99% successful kill rate, so I would say that. Story 99. Pretty much nothing that is not already near that size. The square cube law means that most small creatures, if scaled up, would collapse under their own weight. Story 100. A domestic cat is one of the deadliest animals on the planet, pound for pound, perhaps with the exception of mosquitoes. Story 101. Spiders or octopuses. I have a theory that spiders and octopuses are allied to take over Earth on land and at sea. This is why aliens have us build robots. In the spider wars, humans suffer heavy casualties and retreat to the oceans, where spiders cannot follow, only to be flanked by octopuses. Only a fraction of the population survives, sorry Gen Alpha, and it is the robots, now waterproof, that save the humans. An uneasy alliance forms between humans and humanoids, which ultimately leads to the robot wars. In a twisted turn, humans, Establish a truce with the spiders in exchange for allowing the octopus population to recover. Spider silk is used to make weapons because, when used correctly, it can penetrate the alloys that robots are made from. In their haste to increase numbers, the robots used cheaper materials, resulting in weaker external armor. Peace returns and humans rebuild society, but decisions must be approved by the Great Council, which includes representatives of spiders, octopuses, and aliens. The aliens have a plan of their own. Story 102. Which whale species are we talking about? There is a lot of variation in size among species. If you mean the blue whale, the largest animal ever to exist on Earth, then any terrestrial land-based animal would be non-threatening if suddenly scaled up to a blue whale's size, for a simple reason: it would collapse under its own weight and suffocate. Edited to add, there are inherent limits to how large animals can be before their bones begin breaking under their own weight. Their hearts cannot pump blood quickly enough, and their lungs cannot supply enough oxygen for the blood that must circulate. Body plans evolve to function at a certain size range and are not optimized for much larger scales. Arthropods such as insects, arachnids, and crustaceans have open circulatory systems that are not efficient enough to function beyond certain volume to surface area ratios. The giant arthropods in the fossil record lived when the partial pressure of oxygen in Earth's atmosphere was much higher. In today's atmosphere, those giant creatures would not survive. If we are more modest and use something like a beluga whale, some vertebrates could probably be scaled up to that size and at least survive long enough to be threatening. A Bengal tiger, roughly the size of a large polar bear, would be fearsome indeed. Story 103. The dragonfly is the most efficient predator in the animal kingdom, with an almost 100% success rate when hunting. Story 104. I don't know how anyone hasn't said a wasp yet. Fuck wasps. Story 105. Trapjaw ants snap their jaws at up to 140 miles per hour, the fastest self-powered movement in the animal kingdom. They are known to kill or launch animals several times their size. When they snap their jaws against the ground, they can fling their whole body 20 to 30 times their body length through the air. Story 106. Dragonflies would now be hungry spaceships. I am not sure what on earth you would do with that. Story 107. A chihuahua. The murder devils are only held back by their size. Blood for the blood god. Skulls for the skull throne. Story 108. Ants. Some ants can carry 50 times their body weight. A blue whale can weigh up to 220 tons. An ant that size could lift 22 million pounds. What do you do when the ant just lifts the building you're hiding under? Story 109. A rabbit. But not just any rabbit. It is the rabbit of Kerbanig. It is dynamite at rabbit size. Story 110. A slug. That wall of slimy, pulsating flesh is eldritch horror when it moves. Story 111. Honey badgers, larger than the domestic cat, are the quintessential menace of the animal kingdom. Honey badgers the size of a whale would be terrifying. Story 112. A house cat catches and kills anything smaller than it for fun. Story 113. Chihuahuas, for sure. They have the attitude but not the size. They will wreak havoc. Story 114. Unless they are in water, I think they would all collapse under their own weight. But a giant corpse the size of a whale would still be a menace. Story 115. Some small birds, such as hummingbirds and swallows, are extremely territorial and aggressive. Story 116. A mud dauber wasp paralyzes its prey with venom and then seals it in a dark mud coffin to be eaten alive by its larvae. Story 117. Most animals would be terrifying at that size. Bugs that large would be nightmarish. Cats would be particularly bad, though. Generally, animals kill for food or defense, but cats, on the other hand, like to play with their food. They are adorable but can be quite sadistic. Story 118. Honey badger, what can we possibly do? Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.